My name doesn't matter to you. It mattered to a world that doesn't exist anymore, and it matters to 11 names I carry that don't get to grow old. So call me Vess. Sergeant Joran Vess, 71st Kuldrathi Rifles, the Hollow Guard. That'll do. I was born under stone. Kaldrath is a fortress world, has been since before my grandmother's grandmother. No sky you'd call open. Just the bastion rings, layer on layer, gun emplacements older than the Imperium's memory of us, and between them, us. The people who load the guns and then become the guns. They put a lasgun stock against my shoulder when I was 7, not to fire it, just to know the weight. My mother said a soldier who's afraid of the weight is a soldier who flinches, and a flinch gets the man beside you killed before it gets you. I didn't understand that yet. I understood it by the time I was 12. That was the year they marched the whole cadet block out to the lower yard to watch a deserter die. I remember the smell first, cold stone, gun oil, and fierce sweat off 300 children trying not to shake. The man's name was struck from every roster before they even loaded the rifle. The commissar who did it, not mine, an older one, long dead now, told us that a name unspoken is a mercy. Better to vanish than to be remembered as the man who ran. I didn't understand mercy like that either, not then. I understand it now. There are worse things than being forgotten. I've seen some of them. Coming of age on Kaldrath isn't a party, it's a posting. The day you turn 16, they hand you a rifle that's yours, actually yours, and a number. And you stop being a child of the fortress and start being a component of it. I remember the weight of my own lasgun different from the practice one, heavier somehow, though it wasn't. I remember Aleth Sorn standing next to me in that line, grinning like it was a festival day, elbowing me and saying we'd be sergeants before we were 30 or corpses before we were 20, and either way, we'd never have to hear our mothers nag us about laundry again. Aleth had a mouth on him, kept it right up until the end. They folded us into the 71st that same season, a regiment freshly gutted from some campaign I never got the full account of, needing warm bodies to fill cold billets. That's where I met the rest of them. Baron Ox, heavy weapons, twice my age, built like the bastion walls and about as talkative. Tilu Marsh, our Vox operator, 17 and terrified, and better at her job than anyone twice her nerve. Yevgen Kor, our sharpshooter, who never wasted a word or a last charge in his life, and Commissar Aldous Wren, who walked among us like a man already counting which of us he'd need to shoot and which he wouldn't, and never once let us see which list we were on. Reen wasn't cruel for its own sake. I want that said plainly, because it matters to what comes after. He was exact. He believed discipline was the only mercy the universe extended to soldiers like us, and he was probably right. Our first real deployment was an agri world called Vethran's Furrow, putting down a cultist uprising that had been quietly rotting the harvest silos from the inside for years before anyone noticed the grain shipments running short. I want to tell you, it was glorious. It wasn't. It was mud and wire and an ambush in a threshing yard that took Corporal Den, not one of the names you'll remember, he barely lasted the week, through the throat before he'd fired a single shot. I killed my first man there, not a soldier, a cultist mid-20s, robes stitched with sigils I made myself stop looking at afterward because looking too long at that stitching does something to you. He came at me with a cleaver and I put 3 last bolts into his chest before my hands understood what my training already knew. He fell into the grain. I remember thinking absurdly that they'd have to burn that whole silo now. Waste, on top of everything else. Baran found me after, sitting with my back against a grain hopper, shaking. He didn't say anything comforting. He just sat down next to me, lit a low stick and said, "First one's the only one that talks to you afterward. After that they go quiet. Doesn't mean they don't count, means you've started doing the job." He was right. God Emperor help me, he was right. The campaigns after that blur the way campaigns do, orcs on a mining moon. And if you've never heard a full orc, wah, Come over a ridgeline, the sound of it, the sheer delighted violence of it. You haven't heard fear yet. They fight like it's the best day of their lives, every single one of them. That's the horror of orcs. Not that they hate you, but that they don't. Not really. They're just having the time of their lives, killing you. And there are so many of them that it doesn't matter how many you drop. We lost Corporal Den's replacement there too. I stopped learning the names of replacements for a while after that. Baron called it self-defense. I called it cowardice. We were both right. Ammunition discipline became a religion of its own by then. 2 power packs a man, sometimes 1. And God Emperor help you if you burned through them on suppressive fire instead of aimed shots. Ren drilled that into every green trooper personally. The Guard wins wars through weight of bodies and weight of will, not weight of ordnance, because ordnance runs out and the Imperium never sends enough, not ever, not once in 10,000 years of asking. We held. We always held right up until we didn't, and then we held the next line back instead. The thing I need to tell you about it, the reason I'm recording this at all, happened on a shattered hab world called Ostravan's Landing, during the cultist purges that came before the sky itself turned wrong. We were fighting alongside a detachment of the Adeptus Astartes. The Sable Wardens, a chapter I'd never heard of before and never expect you to have heard of either. That's not how it works. You don't get briefed on the Astartes, you just get told to hold this street corner while the giants go do the real work 3 blocks over. I saw one up close for the first time in my life. Battle Brother Corvain. 9 feet of ceramite and violence, and I want you to understand what that does to a guardsman's nerves just to stand near. The sheer physical wrongness of a man built that large, moving that fast, radiating that much lethal calm. We were grateful he was on our side. We were also, every one of us, a little afraid of him the way you're afraid of a Prometheum tank you're standing too close to. Not because it means you harm, because of what happens if it goes wrong. It went wrong on the 4th day. There was a relic in the lower crypts beneath the cathedral district. Cultists had been using it as a focus for their rites. Some warp-touched thing wrapped in chains and old vestments that nobody wanted to look at directly. Corvain went down to secure it personally. I was topside on Vox Relay with Tilu when the channel went bad. Not dead, bad. A sound came through that I still hear some nights. Not a scream, lower than that, wetter, like something enormous trying to speak with a throat that wasn't built for the words it was being made to say. Ren ordered the crypt sealed. Corvain's own chapter serfs, the ones assigned to us for liaison, went white as bone and said the same thing, almost in unison, like they drilled for it. If he doesn't come out clean, nothing comes out at all. He came out. God, Emperor, forgive me, I wish he hadn't. His armor was the same. His silhouette was the same. But something underneath the ceramite was wearing him now, the way you'd wear a coat 2 sizes too small, straining every seam of him from the inside. His eye lenses didn't track like a man's eyes anymore. They swept, slow and hungry, like something cataloguing a larder. When he spoke, it wasn't his voice giving the words shape. It was something older borrowing his mouth, and it knew all of our names, though none of us had ever given them. I've fought orcs that wanted to gut me for sport. I've fought cultists who wanted to drag me down into whatever their gods were promising them. I had never, before that hour, understood what it was to be looked at by something that didn't want to kill me so much as unmake me, the way you'd unmake a bad sentence. The Sable Wardens don't hesitate. That's the part nobody tells you about Space Marines until you've seen it. The speed of the decision, not the speed of the body. Their sergeant gave the order to put down their own battle brother before Corvain's possessed body had finished its second stride toward us, and I watched 3 Astartes bolter rounds do to that armor what an entire orc hoarder hadn't managed in 4 days of siege. It still took him 9 seconds to fall. I counted, because counting was the only thing keeping my hands steady on my rifle. 9 seconds of a 9-foot transhuman warrior, wearing something from beyond the veil, trying to close the distance on a huddle of terrified guardsmen who couldn't have hurt it if we'd emptied every power pack we owned into its chest. Ren didn't let us look away. He said later, and this is the part I actually needed to hear, though I hated him for it that night, that a guardsman who's never seen what the warp can wear as a coat is a guardsman who doesn't understand what the line is actually for. The wall isn't against orcs. The wall isn't even against the ruinous powers directly. The wall is against that. Against a good man's body used as a door. We burned what was left. Sable Wardens don't leave remains to chance, not after that. I don't blame them. 3 weeks later, the Voxnet brought word that broke something in all of us, worse than the crypt had. The Kesh Expanse, a whole cluster of settled systems coreward of us, including a hive world called Korath's Anchor that half our newer recruits had kin on, had gone dark behind something the astropaths were calling, in the careful, terrified language astropaths use, a great rift event, not a raid, not an invasion. The sky itself had torn, and everything behind the tear had simply stopped being reachable. Stopped, for all any of us knew, being anything at all. Tilu had a cousin on Korath's Anchor. She didn't cry where we could see her. She just went quiet for 4 days, the kind of quiet Baron had warned me about after my first kill. Except this quiet didn't lift. We lost Yevgen 2 days after the news came through. Not to the enemy, to a cultist counteroffensive that hit while half the regiment was still reeling from Korath's Anchor. He went out the way he'd lived. 1 shot, 1 kill, right up until the mortar round that didn't care how good his aim was. I asked Baron that night what any of it was for. If the Emperor let the sky itself fall open, if he let a good man's body get worn like a stolen coat, what exactly were we still holding the line for? Baran didn't answer with scripture. He wasn't that kind of man. He said, "We're not holding it for him, we're holding it for the 7-year-olds getting handed a rifle stock on some fortress world tonight who don't know yet whether they'll grow old. That's all it's ever been. Faith's the reason they give you in the catechism, the line's the reason you actually stay." Baran died the following spring, feeding ammunition into his own heavy bolter with both hands after the loader's crew went down, buying 40 seconds that let the rest of the platoon fall back. 40 seconds. I've done the arithmetic on that trade more times than I'll admit to you now. Aleth made it further than any of us expected, mouth and all, until a Xenos round on some nameless siege line I still can't pronounce right took the grin off his face for good. I train recruits now. None of them from Kaldrath. That posting's long behind me, folded into other campaigns, other billets. The way regiments get folded when the ones they lost outnumber the ones still standing. My new recruits are off-world orphans of a dozen collapsed hive stacks, hollow-eyed and hungry, and about as far from fortress bred as you can get. I teach them the weight of the rifle stock, the same way my mother taught me. I teach them ammunition discipline. I teach them, when they're old enough to hear it without breaking, what a good man looks like when something else is wearing him, and why the order to fire has to come faster than the grief does. I don't teach them Kaldrath's name in the old chants anymore. There's no home world left behind those words for most of them to picture. So I changed the words. Not the meaning, just the words, so they'd fit the new mouths saying them. Tomorrow I ship out again. Last time, most likely. I've felt my hands lose their steadiness this past year, and a sergeant who's lost his steadiness owes the recruits behind him an honest accounting of that. I'm recording this tonight because I want it said once, plainly, by someone who was there. Before the record of it is just a casualty tally in an archive nobody reads. I've seen what the warp does when it wears a hero's body like a coat. I've watched 9 seconds take longer than 9 years. I've buried more names than I've kept, and I've taught the ones who came after me to carry a rifle's weight without flinching, the same way it was taught to me, in a fortress that doesn't exist behind my eyes anymore, except as a shape I describe to strangers. None of that has told me the reason for any of it. Baron was right. There isn't a reason, not the kind you can hold in your hand. There's only the line, and who's standing on it. and whether the ones behind you get another season to grow. So tomorrow I go back to the line. Not because I believe the sky won't tear again, it will. Not because I believe every soldier beside me will come home wearing only himself. Some of them won't. I go back because the alternative to holding is not holding, and I have buried too many names to hand that choice to men younger than the fear they haven't met yet. The fortress is gone. The line remains. Caldrath is ash. The Hollow Guard still stands.